My best friend has a 7-year-old daughter named Sarah. Every now and then, I'd watch her when they needed help. They lived in a beautiful home in Washington, surrounded by trees and mountains. The nearest neighbors were miles away, so it was always peaceful and quiet when I stayed there. One day, my friend asked if I could watch Sarah for 2 days while she went on a business trip. I agreed, and a few weeks later, I arrived at their house. We chatted for a bit and had lunch together before she finished packing and left to catch her flight. I spent a few hours hanging out with Sarah, listening to her talk about school and her friends. Later, we went out to pick up some dinner and dessert. We got back to the house around 8 p.m. and decided to watch a movie before bed. I sat on the couch, scrolling through our list of movies, when Sarah suddenly asked, "Who's that?" I looked where she was pointing, towards the front door. Just then, I heard a knock. Given how isolated the house was, I never expected anyone to show up. Nervously, I walked over and cracked the door open. A tall man stood on the porch, looking a bit surprised when I answered. "Can I help you?" I asked. He leaned slightly to the left, peeking through the crack in the door. "Sorry, just making sure someone was home," he replied, before turning away and walking off. It was strange and unsettling. I quickly closed and locked the door, then did the same with the back door. When Sarah asked who it was, I told her it was just a neighbor, trying to shake it off, the weirdness. I went back to the couch and started the movie. We enjoyed the film, though it was a bit longer than I had anticipated. After it ended, I told Sarah it was time for bed, and I followed her upstairs as she got ready. Once she was in the bed, I came back downstairs and sat on the couch. It was little past 10 and I wasn't tired yet, so I turned on TV, planning to wind down for a bit. As the TV played, I began hearing a crunching sound from somewhere in the house. I muted the show and listened carefully. The sound was coming from the back of the house. I walked over to the back door and turned on the porch light, but all I saw was an empty porch and dark outline of trees. I stood there for a few more minutes, listening, but eventually I went back to the couch, tried convincing myself that my mind was playing tricks on me, given how eerie the dark forest made me feel. During the day, the surroundings were beautiful, but at night, they made me uneasy. I turned the TV volume up again and lay down, trying to get sleepy. Apparently, it worked too well because I soon fell asleep on the couch. A couple of hours later, I woke up to the TV still on. I turned it off and sat up, rubbing my eyes. That's when I noticed the silence in the house. It was completely still, but then the crunching sound returned. This time, it was clearly footsteps coming from the right side of the house, right outside the room I was in. The footsteps stopped, seemingly right outside one of the windows where the curtains were down. Terrified, I slowly and quietly walked over to the window and pulled back the curtains. There was nothing there. I looked around, but I couldn't see anything unusual. I tried to convince myself that I was just tired and imagining things. After getting a glass of water, I headed upstairs to bed. The next morning, I made breakfast for Sarah and me. As we discussed our plans for the day, she suddenly asked, "Why were you walking around outside last night?" I froze. I asked her what she saw, and she told me she had heard someone walking around the house for almost an hour after she had gone to bed. A chill ran down my spine. I told Sarah to stay inside while I went to look around outside. I told Sarah to stay inside while I went to look around outside. Grabbing a small knife for protection, I stepped out to the front door and walked around the house. It was hard to tell if anything was out of place, but I did notice some scratches near the windows and doors. However, everything else seemed normal. There were no visible footprints in the yard. As it was mostly thick grass. As I made my way back to the front door, I saw the man from the previous day walking down the street in from the house. He was just passing by, but considering how far the house was from anything else, it was strange. I went back inside and told Sarah that we were going to the mall to spend the day. I didn't want to be in the house anymore, so we stayed out until 6 p.m. My friend called to check in, and I mentioned this strange man. When I described him, she said she recognized him. Apparently, a few weeks ago, he had to come to her house asking if he could stay the night, which she of course declined. We agreed that if anything else happened, I would call the police immediately. As the sun started to set, I double-checked the doors to make sure they were locked. Around 9 p.m., Sarah and I were playing a board game before bed, when we both heard a soft tapping noise coming from one of the windows. I stood up slowly and told Sarah to stay calm. Then a loud scratching sound came from outside right from the window. I grabbed Sarah and ran into the garage. We got in the car and I backed out of the driveway as fast as I could, making sure the garage door fully closed before diving off. The darkness made it hard to see, but Sarah said she saw someone running through the trees behind the house. I drove to a hotel parking lot and called the police to report what happened. Then called my friend to let her know. We met with 2 officers at the hotel. About 10 minutes later, they informed us that 2 more officers were at the house checking things out. I told them everything and gave a description of the man. Eventually, they left and we spent the night at the hotel. The next morning, my friend called to say her flight had just landed and she would be back in an hour. We headed over to the house and waited in the driveway for her to arrive. Once she got there, we all went together to make sure it was safe. I stayed for a few hours to talk about everything that happened. Then said goodbye and went home. It was one of the scariest experiences of my life. Thankfully, the man was caught a month later after multiple reports of him trying to break into other homes. What scares me the most is that he never explained why he did that. He had broken into homes but didn't steal anything. He just looked around and left. I still wonder what he was really trying to do. During my college years, I took a job as a babysitter to earn extra money while maintaining a flexible schedule. One family I frequently babysat for had a quiet 5-year-old girl named Lily. She was sweet and kept herself entertained with her toys and books, which made my job easier. This was my 7th time watching her, and I had arrived just before her parents were heading out for an evening event. Before leaving, her parents reminded me that they would be back around midnight and asked me to ensure Lily was in bed by 10. The first few hours passed without incident. We played games and watched her favorite cartoons. But as the night wore on, I began to sense something was off. Lily was unusually quiet and kept glancing toward the hallway leading to the basement. Eventually, she spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "What's that noise coming from downstairs?" I was taken aback. I hadn't heard anything. Curious, I turned off the TV, and sure enough, there was a faint rustling sound coming from the basement. I could see the worry on Lily's face, so I comforted her, saying it was probably just a small animal that had found its way in. I asked her to stay put while I checked out. The basement door cracked open as I flipped the light switch. The dim glow revealed a large, unfinished space filled with old furniture and stored boxes. My heart raced as I cautiously stepped down the cracky stairs. I could still hear the rustling, but it seemed to be coming from further back in the shadows. I searched behind a few boxes but found nothing. Relieved, I returned upstairs and reassured Lily that everything was fine. We resumed our evening, and the noise was soon forgotten. As the clock neared 10 p.m., I began preparing Lily for bed. I tucked her in, kissed her goodnight, and headed back downstairs, planning to watch some TV until her parents returned. Just as I got comfortable, the rustling returned, louder and more persistent. My stomach dropped. Suddenly, I heard the soft crack of Lily's bedroom door opening. "Are you there?" she called out, her voice shaky. "Stay in bed, Lily. I'll be right back," I urged, my heart pounding in my chest. I hurried to the basement door, fear coursing through me. I fumbled for my phone, ready to call for help if necessary. As I opened the door, the rustling grew frantic. I turned on the light, and my breath caught in my throat. There, crouched in corner, was a man rummaging through boxes. Panic surged through me. Without thinking, I slammed the door and shut, and I rushed upstairs. "Lily, we need to leave now," I shouted, grabbing her hand and racing for the front door. Once outside, I called 911. My voice trembled as I explained the situation. I kept my eyes fixed on the house, watching for any sign of movement from the windows. As I stood across the street, I called Lily's parents, urging them home immediately. The wait felt like an eternity, but finally, the sounds of sirens pierced through the air. The police arrived and quickly assessed the situation. After I explained what happened, they searched the basement, but found no trace of intruder. They did, however, discover signs that someone had been living there recently. Old clothes and empty food wrap hidden among the boxes. When Lily's parents returned, they were grateful for my quick thinking and discussed the situation with the officer. After a thorough investigation, I was allowed to leave, but the experience left me shaken. In the following days, I couldn't shake the feeling of paranoia. I checked in with Lily's parents to see if they had any updates, but nothing. I decided not to babysit anymore. The thought of someone lurking in the shadows was too unsettling. What haunted me the most was knowing he had escaped, potentially hiding in someone else's basement, waiting for his next chance.